Not going to win many games, especially in the Dome when Quinten Post and Jaiden Zackery don't score any points. BC holds on to keep the game close after a miserable start, but there's a lot to talk about. We're going to Beacon Street Ball to talk about this on today's show.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone out there in Boston College Nation. This is AJ Black. I am the editor and publisher of Eagle Insider. This is Locked On Boston College, your team every day. We're the only Boston College podcast that does this 5 days a week. We have special guests all the time, and one of our regular guests is Beacon Street Ball, who's here to talk about the Syracuse game yesterday. Tough game to watch, but we want to hear what he has to say. Beak, how's it going?
It's going. You're getting me about 20 minutes after I just got home from Syracuse, so I'm excited to talk about the game. Obviously not the result that anybody wanted, but, excited to break down that and a couple other things, and always a pleasure to be on the show.
So the beginning of yesterday's game was one of the worst starts of a game I've ever seen Boston College play, especially under Earl Grant. I mean, you could probably go back to Steve Donahue or Jim Christian and find games that were similar, but you didn't expect BC in a very big game to come out and play as poorly as they did. And it was shocking. What was it, like 3 minutes left in the first half? They had 9 points and 12 turnovers. Yep. What was going on?
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, it was, like you just said, they broke the 10-point barrier with 3 minutes and 15 seconds remaining in the first half. And that gave them, I believe, 12 points and either 11 or 12 turnovers. There was a point earlier in the first half at the 8-minute mark at the media timeout there, which was at 7:56. BC had 7 points and 9 turnovers. And then there was another stretch I saw this morning. I didn't even realize it in real time, where BC went 2 minutes and 20 seconds where they didn't even get a shot attempt. They had 5 possessions and 5 turnovers right in a row, and all 5 were I would call forced errors, right? It wasn't like a charge, or it wasn't like a moving screen. It was all live ball turnovers that all led to Syracuse points and somewhere or another. There was some free throws in there, but yeah, I mean, it was the worst start. I tweeted during the game. It was the worst basketball game I've ever seen in person. The first half was. I've been to a ton of these games. Syracuse is a very weird gym, and I think, unfortunately, what may have happened, and it's not an excuse, but I do think what may have happened is the sight lines were just so bad. And it was a team that was coming in. Guys like Claudel had shot it well. Donnie had been shooting it pretty well, obviously, and Post had been shooting it well. And even Glock shot it really well in that Georgia Tech game. And you had guys taking shots that probably weren't even bad shots, but they were just missing by a mile. I mean, we had a corner 3 that probably was, no exaggeration, probably 3 feet long. Claudel had a pull-up that was probably 1.5 feet short. And the sight lines in there are just really bad. I know it's an excuse that people don't want to hear, but I think that's why you saw in the second half, the offense got going a little bit. The way BC was going in the first half was basically just metal bleachers as a backdrop. And then the other half, the second half, there was far more fan attendance on that end, and you had a little more to aim at, if you will. But yeah, I mean, I thought the first half was as bad as you could play. Mason's 3 there at basically the buzzer to cut it to 10 was a gift, and then they played really well to open the second half. I thought we had a fighting chance there, but it's just, as you mentioned in the jump there, right? It's going to be really tough to overcome 0 points from Quinten Post and 0 points from Jaiden Zackery. It doesn't matter how high you are on either person or how low you are on either person. If you have 2 starters that are giving you, I think they played a combined like 54 minutes, and you get 0 points like that, that's not going to work in any way, shape, or form.
So let's start it off with Post. He seemed to, the center for Syracuse seemed to be much more physical with him, and he seemed to have a real hard time reacting to that. What did you were there? What did you see out of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that has concerned me going all the way back to the Lehigh game. So Lehigh was the first time I really noticed it, where up until the Lehigh game, I guess to preface it, teams were basically letting Post catch with his back to the basket, right, or a little higher than the free throw line. And then he was able to turn, assess the defense, and decide if he was going to drive, kick, or just sort of keep the offense moving. After the Lehigh game, teams have realized, well, if we just really, really body, for lack of a better term, post on the catch, he can't get into his move, and therefore the offense can't get into its move quite as easily. And so what I saw last night was exactly sort of what you said, right? They were very physical with him on every single catch. And I don't think he got frustrated like you might have seen last year. Instead, I think what happened is he was so worried about, you know, I don't want to say getting blocked, because I don't think that was it, but he was so worried about taking a bad shot that he ended up forcing some really, really bad passes and some uncharacteristic passes. I mean, he had some passes that were, you know, lazy, not in the sense that he wasn't paying attention. They were just softballs and that were intercepted. I think there was one where he tried to basically skip it from the free throw line, basically the elbow, to the opposite corner, and it was intercepted. I mean, you know, the guy in the first row could have intercepted it. And he just never got going. I wrote this in my write-up today, but I have a lot of issues with the way the offense is being schemed up for him right now. I don't think they're doing him any favors. I really don't. I think, you know, we saw some really good action in St. John's when Soriano was playing him hard, that, you know, Earl Grant and Anthony Goins were able to figure out, like, okay, you know, we can use him, much like how we saw him in the ACC tournament last year. We can sort of use him as a shooter and at least get him going that way so that they can't close out quite as hard, because he's not going to be back to the basket. But yeah, just incredibly disappointing from the coaches in the way that and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. He didn't play well, even if the coaches were doing it well. And I don't think he'd tell you he played well. To foul out too, that's not, you know, what you want. I think that's the first time he's fouled out. And somebody mentioned me, but I think it's like 25 or 26 games. So, you know, it's not what you want. That's for sure. And hopefully he can bounce back. I don't think it's going to get any easier against Clemson. I think Brownell's a good coach. So you know, who knows?
Did he look healthy to you? Like,
yeah. So he did go down with, I know people probably wondering, he went down with I guess, turned ankle, I would say. They just taped it back up. I don't think he was ever moving poorly. I think he just is not used to, and again, this comes back to practices and coaching. I don't think he's used to so physical on the catch. It's not an issue. I don't think he has any problem with physicality when he's working, you know, back to the basket offense down low. But on that catch, I mean, it's in his head right now, and it's, the offense has to change, or else I don't know, you know, if Claudel and Glock and other people can bail him out enough if we can't get him going.
In a moment, we're going to continue talking about this. I want to look at the second half, what sparked the comeback, because it was a loss, but there was still a lot to talk about positively in that second half, and talk a little bit about some of our takeaways from this game and what Earl Grant did at the end of the game that have a lot of fans scratching their heads. We'll get into all of that in just a moment. The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. Now, if you're like me, you're watching all these college football and pro football coaching changes, you can go on FanDuel and get future odds on any of them. If you think that Gerard Mayo is going to take over for Bill Belichick or Mike Vrabel, the odds are up there. Nick Saban, if you think Mike Norvell of FSU is going to take over, you can find the odds. You can get in on that action. You can get same game parlays. If you're watching the Celtics game, you want to get a parlay in the middle of the game, you can do it. So easy. Just find the bets in the new Explore tab, make a parlay in the Parlay Hub. It's so easy to use, and you get paid instantly with your winnings. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup with FanDuel, the official sports partner of the NFL. Locked On Boston College, AJ Black, and I am joined by Beacon Street Ball to talk about BC basketball's loss to Syracuse. In the second half, you know, we talked about Mason Madsen hitting the buzzer beater in the first half. That gave them a little spark. Now, Syracuse comes out in the start of the second half, and it feels like more of the same. They jump out to about a 16-point lead. But BC, to their credit, as they've shown all year, shows resiliency and doesn't go away. What did you see, Beak, that kind of helped them bounce back and get back into this game and preventing it from becoming a runaway Syracuse win?
Yeah, definitely. I think the first thing is I thought Earl did a good job, like he did in the Georgia Tech game, and we can talk about this in a second, but I thought his intensity was much better, first and foremost. Which I love first, like I'll say that. So his intensity was really good, and I think when he gets super into it and he is, far more fiery than if you've ever sat, or really watched him during a game, he's usually pretty composed. What we saw last night in the second half was the same thing we saw in the second half of the Georgia Tech game, where he is screaming at guys on offense. He is stopping them. He's moving guys around. I'd say the only way I can describe it is it would be like sort of a scrimmage that they do where they stop it in the middle and he basically goes out on the floor and moves guys around. So his intensity is the first thing that I do think this team feeds off of. The second thing, I thought he did a pretty good job understanding, and I'll give him credit for this, that Zackery didn't have it. Post has a lot more value than Zackery in terms of his ability to alter shots. Zackery's probably a better defender, but Zackery's also 6'2" on a good day. So Post being down low gives him a little more flexibility. So he flipped Zackery for Chaz Kelly, who I thought, again, played pretty well. And then he ran out there, I believe it was Chaz, Donald Hand Jr., Mason Madsen, Devin McLaughlin, and Prince. And it was the best game we've seen out of Prince. And those five were able to fight and compete. Madsen made some big shots. Prince did a really good job of working methodically through the zone and getting shots at the rim. He was, by far the most physical player for BC last night, I thought. And then, the other thing is that I think that group just has a bit of a chip on its shoulder. I really do. I think you have guys who believe they should be playing more. Madsen, Hand, and Kelly, probably the big three there, right? But Glock, you're never going to have an effort issue with. I thought, once again, he played his tail off for every minute he was out there. I think he played 35 minutes. And those guys got 9 minutes of run. And when that run was over, there was exactly 3 minutes left, actually. And it was a 2-point basketball game. And then he went back to his 5. And in the real time, I was pretty upset because it's not any specific guy, but I really did think Chaz had earned his ability to finish that game. I think the way he played in that St. John's game was a testament to he's ready for crunch time. And Earl doesn't feel that way. And obviously then Syracuse sort of slowly builds it back up. There was a pretty bad foul, in my opinion, on Post, his 5th, that put the lead to 6. And then, little by little, it became 8. And then obviously 10 with the finish. And it probably shouldn't have been a 10-point loss if you look at how the game started. So I'm glad they didn't lose on a buzzer beater in a way, because I do think it's a bit of a wake-up call that the compete level in these games needs to be better. I think they've struggled with that, save, 12 minutes last night and 20 minutes in Georgia Tech. So I'm hopeful that it's a wake-up call, but it's a tough spot to be in, right? We don't want to be sitting here in mid-January saying that this team needs a wake-up call.
And the end of the game, as someone who watches basketball, I'm not a X's and O's guys, but it just seemed like it was the same play over and over again. They just kept dumping the ball down to Malik Brown, who had no one covering him, and he would just dunk it. And it seemed that play happened 3 or 4 times. And Grant didn't seem to have any answer to that. What was going on with that?
Yeah, I think this is a team right now that is really, really struggling with the ball screen, first and foremost. So there's a lot of issues where teams are pretty much just running the pick and roll. And I assume that it's on the coaches. So I'm not going to blame the players here, but I think the coaches can't decide, do we want to be the type of team that sort of just switches because we have a pretty athletic group 1 through 5? Or do we want to be a team, which is how the NBA defends it, where the big pretty much hedges or comes out and overplays the guard to slow him down and then turns his back and sprints to catch up? We probably have the athleticism to do both right now. They can't decide what they want to do. And therefore, the players are getting caught in really bad spots. I didn't think individual defense was all that bad. on Malik Brown. I really didn't. But what you had was some just incredible breakdowns in which, as you just alluded to, I mean, he was getting wide open looks. I mean, there were, even if he wasn't dunking the basketball, I mean, a 6'1" guy would have put in those layups with no trouble. So it's just bad team defense and stretch is what I'm seeing. And hopefully they can get that figured out. I liked that Earl went to zone for a bit. That's not something that we'd seen, I don't believe, for a minute this year. It worked well towards the end of the year last year. So I'm hopeful that he's, understanding that we got to win these games some way, somehow. And hope, he'll do whatever it takes. And if that means going to zone, I'd like to see more of it because I thought it worked well.
Yeah, because if you look at this game, the BC defensively at times looked really good. The beginning of the game where BC was really struggling, Syracuse struggled too, and it was just
Correct.
that BC was struggling way more.
Yeah.
But as the game wore on, some things that BC was doing really well, I thought they were doing excellent rebounding, especially on the offensive glass at different points.
I agree. I think Prince and Glock, sorry to cut you off there, but I think both Prince and McLaughlin did a really good job. And a lot of, in my opinion, offensive rebounding is effort, but it also comes down to, sort of a nose for the ball. I know that's kind of a dumb saying, but I think Prince has shown that he has a good nose for the basketball. Devin obviously does, but Prince does too. And them as your 4-5, and I was talking about this a little bit on the live show I did afterwards, but there's some reasons for encouragement next year, which if this season does, blow up, which I really hope doesn't happen, I think there's more reason for encouragement here on January 11th than there would have been a month and a half ago.
Now, let's spend a little time. We didn't get a chance to talk after the Georgia Tech game, and I know that's a little bit far away, but can you give me a couple takeaways that you took from that game? Because the Syracuse game, they didn't end the way they did. Georgia Tech, clearly, things went well at the end.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I thought first and foremost, Devin McLaughlin, we've talked about him a lot tonight, but right now he's playing about as good a basketball as anyone can play. I believe he's averaging just over 18.5 points a game in conference. He's up over a block a game, also in conference, and 9 rebounds. So right now in conference, he's probably a fringe all ACC guy. And it was amazing. He had 30 or 40, members of his family or friends and family there, I guess. And to get 30 points in front of them, a career high, a number that BC guards don't even get to very often, let alone BC big. So that was awesome. But as a team, I think Earl deserves some credit. I thought there are people out there who think Earl's lost them some basketball games this year. If you think that he's lost them basketball games, he won them that basketball game on Saturday against Georgia Tech. His energy and the way in which he called the offense in the second half was beautiful. He let Claudel Harris do things that I don't think he's let Claudel Harris do all year, in terms of creating and the trust level for him to sort of start the possession with the basketball as opposed to end the possession with the basketball. And then, I thought he did a good job managing the rotations. I thought, he got some big shots from Kelly once again. I think Kelly had 7 in a row there for a stretch. And, I thought that he's found some sparks with certain rotations. I'd like to see him play those rotations earlier in the game, but that's a good win. That's BC's 4-1 right now, even with the loss last night to Syracuse on the road. That's going to be something that carries really well if they can turn it around. I think they got a really good shot against Clemson on Saturday. I know we'll get to that in a second, but there is, even here at 10-5, there is some reason for encouragement. So I think people just got to stay the course, and I hope the team stays the course. And in a week, maybe you have a couple wins to talk about that are big ones.
And speaking of potential big wins, Beak and I are going to wrap things up talking about that Clemson game. Give you a little preview on what Beak is looking for the Eagles to pull off a big road win. We'll get into that in just a moment. You shouldn't have to worry when you buy tickets to your next event. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, view from your seats, and the best prices guaranteed, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Thinking of heading to the Celtics? If you want to get closer to the parquet, you want to know where your seats are going to be, go on Gametime. You plug in, you can see where your seats are going to be. And the part that I love most about Gametime is there are no hidden fees. It's an all-in price. What you see is what you pay. And that is great because some of those other sites, you see the price and it's about 3 times the price after you get to the end, but that's not the way it works with Gametime. So head over to Gametime right now. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets guaranteed. This is Locked On BC. I'm your host, AJ Black, and we're wrapping things up here with Beacon Street Ball, one of our writers over at Eagle Insider. So the big game on Saturday against a very good Clemson team, and BC's had their history of Earl Grant beating his mentor, or Brad Brownell. So talk a little bit about what this game is like. What's Clemson doing really well so far, and how BC can attack them?
Yeah, so I think the three big things to know about Clemson are, one, it's not that different a team than the team that BC beat 2 years ago. And PJ Hall is still their best player. He's a senior. He's averaging about 18.5 points a game. They swapped out the good shooting. I don't even remember who it was, but for Joe Girard. And they still don't, they still have some issues putting the ball in the basket. They're right around 63rd in scoring, but they've struggled to score over the last month or so. So I love this matchup for BC. I really do. Clemson's lost 3 in a row. PJ Hall has fouled out 2 of the last 3 games. He hasn't scored more than 20 points in, 3 weeks. And so he's really been struggling. Joe Girard is, not shooting the ball very well right now. I'm probably jinxing it by saying all this stuff, but this is a team that is struggling to find their way. They're shooting 30% from 3. All these numbers are basically things that should work in BC's favor. That being said, they are a good basketball team. They're deep. They're, 1 through 8, 1 through 9 is probably better than BC's on any given day. And so it's going to come down to if BC can play to their full potential. Where I think BC has a big advantage is going to be shooting the basketball. I think it's a gym that a lot of these guys have played in, and it's a gym in which BC historically has always shot it pretty well in. So, hopefully you come in there and you can make a statement. And listen, I'll be the first to say it. If this team can win that game at Clemson, they got 2 quad 1 wins, which I'm a net guy through and through. And I don't think the season, if your goal is the NCAA tournament, I don't think it's out of reach. There is a stretch coming up. I know they got Carolina a week from this Saturday, but that stretch, save that game, the next 6 or 7 games, it could go 5-1, 6-0. Would not shock me at all. So I'm hopeful that they can win this game on Saturday, keep people on the bandwagon, and get a bit of a home court advantage. But I think it'll be tight. I don't have any idea what I think the line will be, but I expect it to be close, and I expect BC to, I don't know if they'll win the game. I think they're going to win the game, but I expect it to be right there, and I would be very surprised if it wasn't tight for all 40.
Are you going to be there?
I am going to be there. Before we were doing this, I guess there's a fair amount of weather coming in. The team went straight from Syracuse to Clemson. My flight is at 5:40 a.m., but I guess the weather's supposed to be pretty bad on Saturday. So I'm shooting to be there. I actually love Clemson. Not that this is what anyone cares about, but I think that's a really cool gym. They did a really good job of packing it in real tight, and the students are right on top of you. It's a great atmosphere. So I really am hoping to be there. We'll see how the weather holds out, but I love watching this team, and just, here's, as I tell everybody I talk to, it's like, I just want to win basketball games, and I think we had a good shot on Saturday.
All right, we're going to wrap things up. This was an action-packed episode of Locked On BC. Beak, where can people find you, and where can they find your work?
Yeah, definitely. So writing Eagle Insider, the AJ site here, I said this last time, but, I think I try to do my best over there, but I think even if you're not a big basketball person, there's some really good content. The hockey content is great. I'm not a big hockey guy. I read my first hockey blog earlier this week, and I found it pretty interesting. And then I think Mitch does an excellent job with football. So that's where you can find the writing. I'm also on Twitter. It's at Beacon ST Ball, Beacon Street Ball. If you look it up, I'm sure nobody else has that name. So appreciate everybody who follows along. And if I do go to the game, we'll be live on Twitter probably at about 5:30 on Saturday afternoon. If not, it'll be probably at 5 o'clock. So, because I won't have to get back to my car. But appreciate everyone who tunes into those, and looking forward to keeping it going here for the rest of the year.
All right, and this is AJ Black. Obviously, I'm the editor of Eagle Insider. Check out my work over there. Big weekend transfers that I believe are coming on campus. I just saw Trayshawn Ward, running back from Kansas State, he's on his way to BC right now. He was all decked out in gear at Logan, so he's on his way. But all those transfers should be on campus. We should have some updates on that, and I know there's a few that are still probably coming to visit this weekend. So I'll have updates on Eagle Insider on that for Monday. But on Monday, I will have a full recap of the Clemson game. We'll be looking at hockey, who has a weekend series against Providence. We're going to have a whole lot going on. Next week, we'll have Beacon on. We'll have Mitch on. BC Hockey Blogger would love to come back on. You guys had a great reaction to his first appearance here earlier this week. So make sure to hit your subscribe button wherever you get your Locked On BC, whether it's on YouTube or on Google platforms or Spotify, whatever you use. Just hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on an episode. Thank you all for listening. We'll be back again on Monday with Locked On Boston College, your team every day.
You